Hi guys, I want to make this video as quick as possible. So the Illuminati card, population reduction, I think that's the city of London that we're looking at, and a chemical attack on London. You guys know that I've been looking at that kind of theory for a little while now. I think it's going to be associated with a London Underground station, maybe the Aldwych Tube Station, which is a closed disused station in central London and has been used for the scene of a lot of movies, but was also used for the scene of a terrorist drill, I believe in 2012 or sometime after the 2007 terrorist attacks that we had here with the London bombings. Looking at the iPad Go-To video, it looks like we have the UK. From Obama's perspective, the part that he's covering would be the southeast. The southeast is where London is. Again, from Obama's perspective, we have the L, which would be a 7, looking at it from our perspective, but from his it's an L, and we also have an X going through that L. Bring it back a little bit. Too much? No. Okay, 1 second. Okay, there we are. So you can see the X going through that L, and I think what that is saying is an X on London, basically, an attack on London. London has obviously been bombed before. We had the Blitz, we've been through world wars, so we're not strangers to bombs in London. We've had a number of reports about World War II bombs that have been found and then destroyed, which obviously, again, connects me to an underground bomb. But in order to have an X on London, I think it would have to be chemical. The air would have to be toxic, just like here. So if that happens, then it's the beginning of the population reduction goal associated with the Illuminati card. Now, I think that's going to happen on the 30th of September. My reasoning, on the 23rd of September, they're going to be doing a Thames barrier closing event, which actually is part of a larger event which lasts from the 1st of September to the 30th of September. Now, the 30th of September on the lunar calendar turns out to be the 21st lunar day and the 8th lunar month. A clear reference to what we have here: 2 seeds, 20, 1 seed, 1, and the 8 in the middle, 21/8. And then we've got the connection to the pound as well. Now, if the 21/8 is referencing the lunar calendar, and that's the 30th of September, 1 week after they did Thames barrier closing, kind of lines up a little bit. Then I have to consider that if that happens, it could also be talking about New York, because we have the reference to the apple, and New York is known as the Big Apple. And what I think is, on the same day, the 21st lunar day in the 8th lunar month, September the 30th, there's going to be an underground or underwater explosion off the East Coast. Now, I think that's going to be connected with New York, but again, we've got references in the video to Florida as well. And if they're going to do New York, they're going to do Florida on the same day. Now, that stands out to me because New York, Florida, London, NFL. We've had so much talk about the NFL this year, and it's possible that that was a duplicitous meaning, not just attacking the NFL for something I think is quite foolish, kneeling. That's essentially what it comes down to. You can bring the flag into it if you want to, but the act of kneeling is hardly disrespectful. We kneel when we pray. We kneel to show people respect. The act itself is not disrespectful. So it was obviously brought up and targeted for a different reason, and it could be that it's referencing the letters of 3 capital cities: New York, Florida, and London. And on the same day, the 21st lunar day in the 8th lunar month, on September the 30th, wake me up when September ends. Underground underwater explosion would most likely be associated with Babylon Canyon, using a drone, whether that's the Russian Poseidon, as I do believe that Russian subs came over under Hurricane Florence, as slow as it was moving and as big as it was. But it could also be a homemade drone in terms of a false flag attack, which is something that is heavily emphasized throughout the whole 9/11 scenario or theory conspiracy. If that happens, obviously there'll be an earthquake, and an earthquake of a large magnitude would generally generate a tsunami. So if on the 30th of September you feel a large earthquake and the power goes out, I would suggest getting to higher ground. Now obviously in Japan, places like Japan that have experienced tsunamis before, they're more prepared for these kind of things. When they experience an earthquake, they automatically head to higher ground, assuming that a tsunami is going to follow, whether one does or not. It's not the same for countries that haven't experienced a tsunami, at least not one in our lifetimes. Generally, an earthquake doesn't garner a run for the hills reaction from people in countries that haven't experienced a tsunami. So that's why I'm saying to you guys, if the electricity goes out, there's going to be no warnings from TV or radio, unless you've got a ham radio, in which case you're most likely part of the interoperability drill that they conducted earlier this year, preparing for a blackout. You've also got, conveniently, FEMA camps set up in relation to Hurricane Florence all along the inner part of the East Coast. As Donald Trump said, days worth of food and water has all been put kind of inland. Everything's been moved inland since Hurricane Florence, and nothing has been moved out yet, which is important to note. So if in just over a week's time something were to happen, things are well positioned. FEMA's well positioned, food and water's well positioned, and you'd then have the emergency test on the 3rd of October, which obviously if it's already scheduled to be used, it may be used earlier than that. And then it wouldn't look so unusual that it just all of a sudden came out of the blue, because it was publicly scheduled to take place on the 3rd of October. But coming a little bit back to the 30th of September, that's London, New York, Florida. Now, the reason I say Florida is because in this video, we do have a clear reference in the George Bush scene where he points to Florida, the ocean, submarines, and the house. Now, I think that is connected with what we see here with Obama laughing, because if something happens on the 30th of September to New York and Florida, that's where Donald Trump has Trump Tower and a lot of his businesses, and that's where he has Mar-a-Lago, pointing to Florida, the ocean, submarines, and the house, where we may have an M on the side as well as the flame making up an N and a Y. That kind of does reinforce the interpretation of New York and Florida. Again, with the blue guys, this is referencing the East Coast, one up, one down, New York, Florida. Underwater, maybe land-based in terms of this one. Just interpreting what I see. So if that's the case, and Obama is laughing because something is, because something has happened to New York and Florida, and he's not per se laughing at the fact that New York and Florida have been targeted, but because Donald Trump has a lot of businesses there and them two have a rivalry between each other, he's laughing at the fact that Donald Trump's basically lost everything on the East Coast. But his laughter, which I believe is associated with October the 1st, the next day, quickly turns to fear on the 2nd of October, which would be the 22nd lunar day in the 8th lunar month. And we have to remember that Obama is looking at the apple right now, which has the number 8 in the middle of it. So 22 and 8. The reference to V and 8 is also connected to volcanoes, which I'm going to explain in a minute. But I think on the 1st of October, when we have the scene of Obama laughing, which on the same day, lunar this time, the 22nd lunar day in the 8th lunar month, which if we look at the chart here, the 22nd lunar day in the 8th lunar month is the 1st of October, sorry, down here, is the 1st of October. That is the 101. So he's laughing because something has happened to the East Coast the day before. But then, the next day, or rather on the same day, October the 1st, the issues around Hawaii start happening. Now, it looks like the water that has been flooding Kilauea for the last couple of weeks in association with Hurricane Hector, Hurricane Lane, Hurricane Miriam, Hurricane Olivia, not all of them passed directly through the Hawaiian chain of islands, but they all did bring precipitation to the Hawaiian chain of islands, meaning that water has been getting into this volcano for the last couple of weeks and hasn't been coming back out. So if that water is met with magma, it's flashed into steam and it's not been able to escape the same way it came in, building up pressure within the volcano, most likely within Fissure 8, where we're seeing the glow re-emerging and the cone forming. And obviously the cone's only going to form if there's, you know, some sort of pressure pushing up from underneath. And I think that's obviously associated with all the water that's gone in there. That's going to be their excuse. The real situation is going to be a purposeful man-made detonation, probably associated with the NASA submarine they sent down there on the 20th of August. We know this is a volcanic eruption because the dark eyes, they didn't do it for just any reason. There's smoke drifting off to one side or the other. The nose itself is the cone of the volcano, with this little scratching on top being lava. If they had just drawn it red, then it would have been too obvious. Up here, you've got the lava exploding outwards and outwards again, so it all kind of ties in. Water, volcano, massive eruption. Down here, with this side of his nose, I think they could have drawn the line for his nose more defined, but they didn't, and they did that for a reason, to suggest that there's a gap here on this side of the volcano, which ties in with our theory of the Helena slump sliding off into the ocean, generating an earthquake tsunami, which affects the west coast, and obviously the other islands in the Pacific as well. The other meaning I wanted to put on this with the V and the 8 is the VEI, because it's so layered. This video is too much. I'm sorry. VEI8 is a class of explosion, volcanic explosivity index, and the numbers then indicate the size of the explosion. So from 0 being non-explosive to 8 being generally what is associated with a supervolcano like Yellowstone. Obviously, I'll keep Yellowstone in mind all the time. There's been activity there. It's possible that we could just be surprised, and it's Yellowstone that erupts and not Kilauea. So bear that in mind. But I haven't heard of any, large amounts of water influx in the Yellowstone caldera. So I'm not exactly sure that it's going to be that one. I feel it's more connected to Hawaii, especially with Obama and the Fissure 8 and the 21 and the 8. It all connects to Hawaii. So keeping it with that. VEI8 is the biggest explosion a volcano can have. Now, looking at this scene here, we've got the V, we've got the E, because the word I, E-Y-E, starts with E, but also I is the letter I. So in this one layered meaning, you've got a V, E-I, and then he's looking down at 8. So that's a VEI8 explosion of the Kilauea volcano, I believe, on October the 1st, late on October the 1st, somewhere around coming up to midnight, so 11 o'clock is what I'm thinking. The reason I'm thinking that is because when we come outside the classroom, we hear the 2 chimes, and we also have the small indentation right next to the number 2 on the clock face, which suggests that if this tsunami is coming for the west coast, and the suggestion is it's 2 o'clock on the west coast, Hawaii is 3 hours behind the west coast, so it would be 11 o'clock there. And that makes me think of all these references that they've had to the 11th hour in association with Brett Kavanaugh. The 11th hour, they keep talking about it. That is basically my interpretation. I mean, I brought up a lot more tabs because I had a lot more information I was researching. One if all that happens, as I said, you've got the emergency alert test, which is scheduled for the next day, which would be the 3rd of October, if the West Coast was affected on the 2nd of October, which would be the 23rd lunar day in the 8th lunar month. Obviously, the reference to 23 we've got down here. Again, that could be double layered. The 23rd lunar day in the 8th lunar month on the West Coast, but the 22nd lunar day in the 8th lunar month in Hawaii. Really difficult when dealing with time zones, just to try and make it make sense. Stormy Daniels will be releasing her book on October the 2nd, or at least she would be if I didn't think these events were going to happen. Could see it as convenient. This book is supposedly revealing shocking revelations about the relationship that her and Donald Trump had. And obviously, if something happens on the 30th of September to New York, Florida, and London, and then something happens to Hawaii on October the 1st, and that affects the West Coast on October the 2nd, no one's going to be interested in a book. So, you know, you have to keep thinking about it in multiple different ways. But from that interpretation, I think you guys will agree, it connects the 21st lunar day, the 8th lunar month being September the 30th, the 101 being October the 1st, the very next day, on Obama's forehead, the 22 and the 8 he's looking down at being the same day, October the 1st, a VEI-8 explosion of Hawaii, of Kilauea, in Hawaii, causing the whole scenario we've been talking about, Elena slump, landslide, earthquake, mega tsunami. It would be a mega tsunami, not just a normal tsunami. I think a smaller tsunami would be on the East Coast in association with the underwater detonation. Obviously, people wouldn't know it's an underwater detonation because they wouldn't see the explosion. They would only feel the earthquake and then experience the tsunami. So at first it would seem natural until, as I said, uranium is detected and stock markets are crashing from London and then start crashing from Florida and New York. And then the next day we've got Hawaii, the West Coast, then we're in wartime. Hope it doesn't happen. Pray it doesn't happen. Be vigilant. Be careful. As always, stay close to Jesus. You guys have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.